why would it be painful to someone to get attention and affection?
Because there's, I mean, if there was situation, it's usually painful because it's a source of heartbreak from a previous experience, that there's still an open wound, that either salt has continually been poured into that wound, it never truly got to heal, it's continued to be in the same place. You know, you can't heal in the same place where you got hurt, kind of a scenario. It's just too close to home in all the wrong ways.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I guess what the reason that I'm talking about this is that I want you all to know that we're reaching out and we're doing our best to build relationships and to treat people with kindness and the same kind of respect that we would have wanted. And that might feel painful to them, as it does to Sneezie. Like that act of attention and kindness might be something that someone would push away. Have you ever had that experience, Janet?
Where what?
Where someone pushes you away?
Yes. So it's amazing we're talking about this because I'm experiencing this as we speak. So my girlfriend is in a terrible abusive relationship.
Oh.
And in the past, I have judged her. Oh man. So I haven't been very judgmental.
Yeah.
And I changed my relationship with her and I just start listening without being judgmental. Even if I don't agree, I've just been listening, no comment, no nothing. And our relationship has grown from that.
What kinds of qualities have you needed in order to accomplish that change, Janet?
Shit, my sponsor, I talked to her for real because I was looking at this one way and trying to force what I see on her. Mm-hmm. And everybody's different.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you might think to yourself, she should just leave him.
I told her that 1,000 times. Yes.
Right? And you're probably not the only one. There's probably other people saying that too. It's not so different than someone who says, you know what, you need to stop smoking crack. You know what, you need to get off that meth. People, if you know of a drug addict, somebody has said that to them. Somebody had said something like that to them, probably a lot of times. And they're not listening to that. So what are we going to do instead? How are we going to reach out to someone who might be pushing us away, even though I kind of agree with Janet. I do think Sneezie wants friends, but Sneezie's also very afraid of friendship and has had their heart broken and things haven't worked out well, which I think is, kind of like, that's kind of our recovery community. We are the people of divorces and broken relationships and family estrangement and everything else. We're not the people who know how to have friends or how to be a friend. So since kind of what we do as peers is we offer some friendship, that in itself is very complicated. It sounds simple. We love people better, right? But it's complex and it brings up a lot of feelings about it. And I think we need to be aware of that. We need to be able to kind of prepare for that so that we can respond in ways that make sense and in ways that continue to use the tools. And, Janet is telling us that in order to do that with her friend, she really needed her sponsor's support. I think in order to do this well as a team, we need one another's support. As a staff, we need our supervisor's support. We need our colleagues' support because it's hard to do this and stay on track with it, especially when people are pushing us away a lot because relationships have never worked out well in the past. Like, it kind of makes sense if you've had your heart broken a bunch of times. I've been through heartache and all of the above, Sneezie writes. And and so what are we going to do? How are we going to make a connection with Sneezie?
So even, okay, my son and I would just, you need to stop getting high. You need to stop getting high. Don't talk to me. Don't come up to my job. And one day Libby told me, well, Janet, he's part of this community too. But I was looking at it as personal than as looking at it as he's an addict. And once I accepted that, our relationship is much better, if that makes sense.
It is.
But in the beginning, I was very judgmental, critical. You know, he's supposed to be clean and sober like me. What's the problem?
Yeah.
And that's not reality.
It's not reality. And in fact, the judgment makes it harder for the other person to change. I mean, I think that people need consequences. I believe in natural consequences, but people also need hope to move towards. They need to see where they can go other than doing the negative stuff they're involved with. They need to be able to say, there is another way to live this life. There is another way for me to handle things. And so that's what we want to surround people with, is a sense of options and choices and hopefulness, rather than you're a bad person because you're using, or you're a bad person because you're a pig and you blew up the house or whatever. You know, like there are going to be these judgments, and they might even be in our own heads. Like the three little wolves were told by their own mother that the pig was bad. We have these messages in our heads. If you see that person is bad. Sometimes it's because we see that part of ourselves in that person. But, you know, our goal is to give people the space to be who they are, but also show them we see the positive in them. If I see the positive in someone, they might be able to see it in themselves. Certainly they can't see it if everybody around the big bad pig sees him as bad, he's not getting any space to change. It's not really, he has nothing to move towards. We need to be a place of attraction into recovery. All right, so kind of wanted to do a role play around Sneezie, but I think y'all are kind of there. I mean, if you were talking to somebody who said, look, my mind's somewhere else, so keep your comments to yourself, how might you respond to that? All you do is make me mad. All you do is make me mad. I'm sorry, but my mind is somewhere else, so keep your comments to yourself. Don't tell me that you care about me. Keep your comments to yourself. How would you respond to that?
Okay, I keep my comments to myself, but you cannot stop me from loving you.
Oh, thank you, Janet. That's a good one. I like that. I mean, I think what I want to point out about Sneezie is Sneezie has had their heart broken. They are pissed off. We don't know exactly why, but they're also giving us some instructions on how they want to be interacted with. They're giving us some information about how to have that relationship in a way that they still feel safe. So I might say something like, so what I hear you saying is that you've trusted people before, you've had these so-called friends, and then you get left alone in the end, and you don't want that to happen again. That's what I hear you saying. And I'm glad you're telling me that, because that's not what I want to do. I want to be someone who's consistent and who you kind of know who I am and what I'm about. And that way, hopefully, Sneezie feels a little bit safer. Sneezie is telling me directly, don't stab me in the back, and don't tell me you love me. And also, Sneezie says a couple of things that make me think that Sneezie is also interested in having physical space. Can you get out of my face? Sneezie says this. This tells me that Sneezie doesn't like it when people are right up on her. She wants to have a little more space there maybe. So these are kind of things that we need to look for, because very often people will give us information on how they want to be interacted with. And if we pay attention to that and we follow their directions, then the person starts feeling safe enough to have an interaction with us because they know that they have some control in that relationship. Another example of that I would give is if you're doing street outreach, maybe you're approaching people in their tents and stuff like that, you want to ask them how they want to be approached. Like say, is it cool if I come by sometimes? Do you want me to call you on your cell phone before I come? What are the good time of day to come? Is it better to come in the morning or the afternoon? Like trying to give people some level of control and choice. Just like if you were at your house, you wouldn't want someone to just roll up to your house and knock on the door and come in. You know, you'd want them maybe to call you beforehand or ring the doorbell. But how do you handle it if they don't have a doorbell? Like people need to be able to have some control in these connections that they're starting to learn how to have. Because Share is a place that's about connections. Maybe we're not even at the word love yet. Maybe we're not at the word caring yet. We're just about, okay, we're going to have some small talk right now. We're going to talk about the weather, you know, like, and for someone who is outside of society, that's kind of a big deal.
It'd be like one of our superpowers, or I'll speak for myself, like one of my superpowers is the ability to disclose, you know, like always being able to, like in Sneezie's case, it'd be like, you know, I would never know what it's like to walk in your shoes personally. Like that's your own path and journey. And I would never try to pretend that I know exactly how you feel. But I know like in my own experience that those situations I've been in are absolutely devastating. And I've never felt lonelier or more, you know, like, and just to like approach it from like, because we don't want to like trauma bond, but we want to identify pain. Like we want to be able to identify and share that pain.
Yeah.
And it's always like, and then what I'll say too is like, we're so used to these brick walls. And I was like, you know what, like those walls, it's exhausting, the amount of work and the effort. And then I can't see through, right? Like I can't see through, like when somebody that does hold value and wants to value me in their life, like walks through, like I can't see them through that brick wall. And like something that's helped me is like a chain link fence with like a shit ton of barbed wire on the top. You know what I mean? Because like we're protected and you can't get to me, but I can get to you if I want to. And I'm going to like allow you to make that choice. Like maybe we could just start with like a chain link fence and like a grip of barbed wire, you know? And they kind of like, they allows them to get this creative picture in their head too of like I do have, like you're saying, like I do have control, like I have a choice in this and I'm not going to get manipulated. Because then what happens too, right, Janet? Like we get people that are like, how did you get in here without my permission? Because we got into their hearts. Like they had a kindness or a likeness or a fondness to us and they weren't prepared for that. And I've experienced it with people where they feel like betrayed, like how, like I like armed robbery or something. Like I got in without their permission, you know what I mean? And they get real defensive. And it's like, so being able to always disclose that, like, I feel you, you know, big time.
And also giving people, you know, you can say, you know what, we might not be best friends, but we can still support each other, you know, like making it so that it doesn't have to be black and white. There can be a middle ground of a connection that isn't like we're not significant others to each other. So what does this mean? What does love really mean? I think people are still kind of figuring that out, especially if they've had some horrible experiences with that word love. I think love is a really loaded term and it means different things to different people. You know, I think disclosing is like you said, Sarah, I think that's really powerful. Like for the person to be able to see that they're not the only one that has suffered in that particular way, like that someone else could understand it and has maybe even been through it and has maybe even been able to work with it and bounce back. You know, like there's a way to get through it. You know, that I think can sometimes give people hope. But often in the moment, you know, as we're using these tools or just kind of greeting someone casually, like I'm thinking of Share Downtown, a lot of these interactions are very casual. It's like someone comes in and you say, hey, you know, how are you, Joe? You know, or Bob, or whatever their name is, you know, and it's just this two individuals who respect one another, who are greeting each other. And that interaction in itself is going to be different than what someone might experience on the street, where someone wouldn't even talk to you. Or if you were sitting down on the ground, someone would literally like step over you and not even acknowledge you as a human being. You know, when people are accustomed to not being acknowledged, the fact that you acknowledge someone, or perhaps remember their name, or remember something about them, like, hey, how's your dog doing? I saw I was limping last time I saw you. You know, something, that kind of little stuff is not little when you don't have any of it. So these are some of the ways to both, like, I think on the one hand, we want to, if someone's asking for distance, we want to respect that. And on the other hand, we still want to find ways to make some kind of connection. So the challenge is, since so many of the people that we're reaching out to find those connections very painful and very scary, we want to listen to them when they're giving us directions about how they want to be interacted with. I think it's really important. Disclosing might be part of it. All of these tools might be part of it, actually, but you know, I guess I say this because, you know, if you get cussed out by somebody at Share, they're coming from a place of a lot of pain and fear. We want to be sort of anticipating that it's reasonable and it's predictable that when someone is in a horrible place in their life, they're not the most kind and polite and courteous. You know, they're like cussing you out. They're like, they're off the hook. They're trying to figure out how to survive. They're, you know, some people might call it being manipulative or even being non-compliant. These are some of the labels that get put on us. But if you think about the worst day in your life, were you kind and polite on that day? Probably not. Like, it's reasonable if someone has no housing, is in danger of losing custody of their kids, or is in a domestic violence situation, or whatever it is, that person is not going to be the kindest and most polite person. And I think this is challenging for us because in our recovery process, we've come to learn that we deserve respect, we deserve politeness, we deserve to be treated kindly. And when that doesn't happen at Share, we're responding to it differently. That doesn't mean that we don't have boundaries anymore. That doesn't mean that I just have to let myself sort of get smashed by all of these feelings that are coming at me. It means that I'm using these tools to make it possible for me to have a relationship with someone for whom having that relationship, even though it's something they really want, is very painful. We're acknowledging that, and we're sort of preparing ourselves and maybe the other person for that probability. It's quite likely that someone, like, you know, Janet gave the example. She said the person came in, she'd say, "Hi, how are you?" And she would use their name, and they would say, "Fuck you," every day for 6 months. What was that like for you, Janet? You have to turn off your
Oh, baby, don't make me answer that. It pissed me off.
Of course it did. No one wants to be treated that way.
Pissed me off.
It's very painful, and it makes you angry because you know that you're a child of God and that you don't deserve to be treated that way. This is something that recovery has taught us, that we deserve respect, and that we can have our feelings, and that we can set boundaries with people that don't respect us. So, but what happened was Janet received that person and saw that for what it was, for this expression of pushing away. And that person became really a major ally in terms of creating community at Share.